Have you ever thought about what happens when a party gets so loud, so bright, so out of control that nobody notices the floor is about to give way? Well, that was America in the 1920s. Today, we're talking about the Great Depression, that shocking economic crash that didn't just end the party, it basically changed America forever.
That line right there, it just says it all, doesn't it? It captures the absolutely brutal speed of the collapse. There was no warning, no slow decline, just a terrifying freefall that wiped out fortunes and futures literally in the blink of an eye. So how on earth did that happen?
Okay, so to really understand the crash, we first have to understand the party that came before it. We're talking about the Roaring '20s, a decade of just incredible optimism and what felt like absolutely unstoppable growth. This slide really shows you the split personality of the era. On the surface, you had this amazing vibe, right? Skyscrapers shooting up, jazz music everywhere, and amazing new tech like radios and cars becoming common. But underneath all that sparkle, some really dangerous cracks were starting to form. The whole economy was basically partying on credit, stock market speculation was completely out of control, and while the cities were booming, rural America was already in a world of hurt.
And this right here, this was the gasoline on the fire, buying on margin. It basically turned Wall Street into a giant casino, where it looked like everybody could win. It let regular people bet everything they had, and a lot they didn't have, on the stock market. Think about it. You could buy $100 worth of stock with only $10 of your own cash. The broker loans you the rest. As long as the stock price goes up, you're golden. But what happens when it goes down?
You know, this wasn't just a funny saying. It was what people truly believed. It was a national article of faith. You had folks getting hot stock tips from their barbers, from bellboys, from anybody. The market just seemed to defy gravity. Company profits, business fundamentals? Phew, who needed them when the line just kept going up? It was a collective fantasy, and everybody wanted a piece of it.
And then the music stopped. Just like that. Suddenly, violently. On October 29, 1929, a day we now call Black Tuesday, that fantasy just shattered. The market didn't just dip, it face-planted into a brick wall, taking pretty much everyone's hopes and dreams right down with it.
Just let that number sink in for a second. $200 billion in today's money. Poof, gone. And this wasn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. This was people's life savings, it was college funds, it was the dream of owning a home. It was the entire financial foundation of a generation, just evaporating into thin air.
But here's the thing. Black Tuesday wasn't the end of the story. Oh no. It was just the first domino to fall. What came next was this catastrophic chain reaction that dragged the entire economy and then the entire world down into the abyss.
So here's how it all unraveled. First, you get the crash. Then, remember all that borrowed money from buying on margin? Well, brokers started making margin calls, basically saying, pay us back what you owe, now. But, of course, the money was gone. This bankrupted investors almost instantly. And that panic spread like wildfire to the banks themselves because, well, they'd been playing the market too.
And this led to one of the most iconic and terrifying scenes of the whole depression, the bank runs. People, totally panicked, rushed to the banks to pull out their life savings. But the banks didn't have the cash on hand. Trust just evaporated. Thousands of banks collapsed, taking family fortunes with them. And the panic went global as U.S. banks demanded foreign loans be paid back, choking off international trade and dragging the whole world into the mess.
And in the middle of this absolute meltdown, this was the official message from the top. President Hoover was trying to project calm, but this statement, wow, it just shows how completely disconnected Washington was from the brutal reality that millions of Americans were facing.
So, the financial crisis was one thing, but the human cost, that was something else entirely. Now we're going to look at how ordinary people managed to survive the absolute unimaginable.
The scale of the human catastrophe was just staggering. In only 4 years, unemployment exploded from a pretty normal 3% to 25%. 1 out of every 4 people who wanted a job simply could not find one. Factories went silent. Bread lines stretched for blocks.
People's anger and desperation had to go somewhere, and it found a target. The president's own name became this bitter slang for poverty. The shantytowns made of scrap metal, Hoovervilles. Newspapers people used to keep warm, Hoover blankets. And an empty pocket turned inside out to show you were broke, that was a Hoover flag. It was a direct slap in the face to the leadership they felt had totally failed them.
And as if an economic apocalypse wasn't enough, Mother Nature decided to deal another devastating blow. The Dust Bowl turned America's heartland into a desert. These terrifying black blizzards of dust literally buried farms and homes, forcing millions of people to become refugees in their own country, all heading west, just trying to survive.
This was a real breaking point for the country. The very men who had fought for America in World War I marched on Washington to ask for help, a bonus they'd been promised. And how are they met? Not with aid, but with the U.S. Army, using tear gas to drive them out of their camps. It was this shocking, awful moment of a government turning on its own heroes.
The country was broken. It was desperate, and it was quickly losing all hope. But right out of that desperation, a turning point finally came. A new leader with a totally new, radical idea for how to fight back. With these simple words, Franklin Delano Roosevelt completely changed the national mood. It was so much more than a speech. It was like the first deep breath the country had taken in years. He wasn't just offering new policies, he was offering hope. He was offering a plan.
So FDR's administration just unleashed the storm of new programs which people started calling the alphabet soup. You had the CCC and the WPA, which put millions of people back to work rebuilding the country. And just as importantly, you had programs like the FDIC and the SEC, which were created to fix the broken system, to protect people's savings in banks, and to finally police Wall Street so a disaster like this could never happen again.
And you know, this whole thing was about way more than just the economy. The New Deal also paid artists to capture the nation's experience, and it brought electricity to rural towns that had literally been living in the dark. It was a massive project to rebuild not just roads and bridges, but a sense of national pride and purpose.
And then came this, a truly monumental shift: Social Security. This created a brand new promise from the government to its citizens, that you would be taken care of in your old age. It established this permanent safety net that just fundamentally changed the relationship between the American people and their government.
But the recovery? It wasn't some sudden victory lap. There was no big celebration. It was a slow, grueling climb back built on hard work and new laws. And just as America was getting back on its feet, that hum from the factories started to change as they began retooling not just for recovery, but for the looming threat of another world war. And that, ultimately, is what would truly end the Great Depression.
And all of this leaves us with a question that's just as real today as it was back then. The Great Depression was a brutal, painful lesson in how fragile prosperity can be. It forces us to ask, what exactly holds a society together when that promise of endless growth suddenly stops? It's a question we are all, in one way or another, still trying to answer.